Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the United She Stands podcast. Today, we have a really awesome guest who has been building an organization specifically focused on getting young people on the Democratic Party to run for state and local offices. And that guest is Amanda Litman. She's the co-founder and president of Run for Something, which recruits and supports young, diverse leaders running for office since 2017. They have launched the careers of thousands of millennials and Gen Z candidates, and in the process, changed what leadership looks like in America. She's also the author of 2 books, When We're in Charge, The Next Generation's Guide to Leadership, and Run for Something, a real talk guide to fixing the system yourself, which is a how-to manual for running for office. Before launching Run for Something, Amanda worked on multiple presidential and statewide political campaigns. She graduated from Northwestern University and lives in Brooklyn with her husband, 2 daughters, and their sometimes rowdy dog. We really respect Amanda and all the work she does. We've been followers of hers for a while. And as you'll hear, we actually got to meet her very briefly in person last year when we were at a conference. So we really hope you guys take a lot away from this one. We always take away so much from the work Amanda and her team do.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
This actually is not the first time we met you. We stopped you mid-walk at CrookedCon last year. I'm just going to tell the story real quick for our listeners. I didn't tell Ashley I was going to do this, but
I like it.
Here we go. Ashley and I were walking. I think we had just ended a session or something, and you had walked past us, probably going to a different session. And Ashley looks at me. She's like, "Is that Amanda? Like from Run for Something?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe." And she's talking at a normal level when she's asking me this question, and then she decides to call out for you, but she like lowers her volume, and she's like, "Amanda." I swear. She said it so softly, and somehow you heard. I'm so happy you did, because we got a incredible selfie. But it was just so funny. I like looked at her. I was like, "You barely anything came out of your mouth, and you were trying to get her attention."
I wanted to, and then I like chickened out about it. That was why it happened that way. But it
I'm
worked
really
out.
glad you did, though. It's so nice to get to meet people because, I feel like I interact with so many folks just like over Instagram DMs or on the internet. And so it's nice to get to meet people in person. It's what those events are for. So I'm glad you guys did.
Yes, me too. So Run for Something saw roughly 80,000 people sign up to run for office in the last 12 months alone, which is more than the entirety of those who signed up during Trump's first term. So that is just unreal in terms of numbers and just so exciting, I'm sure, for you, but also for folks who follow what you do and what Run for Something is. So can you talk a little bit about who these people are and how has the profile of the typical candidate changed since 2017?
I love this question. So last year was, as you noted, our biggest candidate recruitment year ever by fourfold. And I think it's due to a couple things. One, people are really pissed. They're pissed at Trump. They're pissed at what's happening across the country, but they're in particular pissed about the Democratic Party. They're pissed at our own leadership. Our biggest moments of candidate recruitment in 2025 were right after the election, when the first big wave of Doge firings kicked off, when Schumer folded on the first shutdown fight, and they were like, "Screw this guy," and then when Mamdani won in New York. They saw that there was an opportunity for a different kind of leader to rise. And I think each of those tells you like a slightly different story, a slightly different type of person, but each are moments where either what happened in the news made people realize, oh, if I want to make a difference, I have to run, or I can. Like there's an opportunity here. The issues that people are signing up to say they care about in their campaigns are all sort of the same. Like it's a lot of housing, childcare, transportation, cost of living issues. The thing that's different in 2025 that we didn't hear as much in 2017 or 2018 is this idea that like, I am done waiting my turn. I am done waiting to be asked. I am done seeking permission to lead. People are ready to just show up and do that. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. That is really exciting.
I love the perspective shift of I get to. Like I try to like do that shift in my head when I like have to go work out. I'm like, oh, I get to go work out. You know what I mean? Because I am able-bodied and I'm very thankful for that. So I love that folks are starting to have that perspective shift when it comes to running for office. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I like what you said about like those 3 events all kind of triggered there was probably a different reason behind the why, but the fact that just unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately in Mamdani's situation, we have so many of these events, it feels like that probably triggers people signing up with you, but it is exciting going forward. So let's talk about the future. You guys have published a Battle Up plan, which is a 5-year, $50 million strategy to expand the electoral map ahead of 2032. Can you walk us through the logic here? Like, what is the Battle Up plan? Why does the path to Democratic power in 2032 run through city councils and school boards right now?
So the Battle Up plan is our vision for what we need to be doing in the next 5 years to change what is possible in 2032. So as I'm sure your listeners know, as you guys know, that there will be redistricting, like the actual formal redistricting process in between 2030 and 2032. We do a census in 2030, then they redraw the maps. Right now, as experts look at what the maps are likely to be based on the way populations are moving, states like New York, Illinois, California are losing populations, in no small part because of affordability. And states like Texas, Florida, Arizona, but also Idaho, Utah, and others are gaining them. What this effectively does to the Electoral College map in particular, which is based on congressional representation, is it changes what is possible for a Democrat to win in order to get the 270 votes you need to win the presidency. The blue wall, such that it ever existed, let's say you win, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, plus Pennsylvania, is not going to be sufficient. The path to victory after the redistricting process will be so small, in part because places like New York and California will lose a couple votes and some of these red states will gain them. So our theory of the case, and we spent all of 2025 doing research into this, talking to people in on the ground, political science folks, redistricting folks, census folks, population experts, as well as our on the ground operatives, to really get a sense, okay, if there's going to be a new electoral college map and new battlegrounds in 2032, where are the places today and for the next 5 years that we need to be investing to build talent? So we landed on a list of a dozen states where we thought our particular intervention could make a difference. Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, Utah, Nebraska, Iowa, Texas, Florida, Idaho, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Yeah, that was a dozen. Got them. Those 12 states, you'll notice there's a little bit of a range there. In each of them, the goal is a little bit different. So in a place like Arizona or North Carolina or Ohio, the goal is to make sure that we're building really strong benches. That Sherrod Brown shouldn't be the only person ready to run for Senate in Ohio, that we need other leaders to run for statewide office in North Carolina besides Roy Cooper. In a place like Utah, Nebraska, and Iowa, we see opportunity. Utah, not super MAGA, not super Democratic, but not super MAGA. And there is an opportunity to give them the kinds of candidates that they might be excited to vote for. Not necessarily like the most progressive, but maybe the most Utah Democrat. And that, I think, is what we have to be really thinking about. In a place like Idaho, it's not about winning it on the presidential level. It's about making sure that we have candidates who can compete when there's a new congressional seat in Idaho for the first time. Right now, it's an at-large office. In 2032, it is likely to be a second congressional seat around Boise. Now, Boise does have a Democratic city council and a Democratic mayor, but can we create more Democrats in Boise and in that area who could run for a House seat in 2032? That's the kind of way we're looking at this. I'm not saying that all of these states are going to be competitive in 2030 or 2032. Our argument is that if we don't fight to build power to win city councils and school boards and library boards and to build talent in these places, none of them will be competitive. And then we have no chance to win. So we're just trying to create lots of opportunities.
That's incredible. I'm so excited just to hear about that because I think and you and your team have done the research, but just not focusing on presidential level, just focusing on all the down ballot races that I didn't even know about before I started, paying attention to politics type of thing. I think that's so obviously so important. And I don't know, it's really exciting that a group, run for something, an organization of its size and, the importance of it. It's so amazing that we're focusing there.
Thank you. And I think for us, we have always focused exclusively on local offices. I think the idea of having to think about Congress every day would make working in politics just not that fun for me personally.
Yeah.
So part of it is this is the place where we get to win, and then you get to do things. You elect a city council member who then creates a bike lane or builds more housing or makes it possible to open businesses, and then you can go to those businesses and you get to live the impact of the work in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. I also love just the fact that you guys are focusing on, and I know a lot of that's driving because we know that there's different ways that we have to win in 2032. I think another, like you said, it we can win local races, and the Democratic Party has largely left some states behind. And I will say Ohio is one of them. It went for Obama twice. And then it was just okay, you guys are red. After Trump came on, it was you guys are red. And it's we don't believe that, first of all. But when they're not investing here, it's what are you going to do? You can't even attempt to win a seat if you're not going to shoot your shot for it. So
that's exactly right. If we're not on the ballot, we can't win the election. I think in particular for us, The local races, like the way to win the big elections is to fight for and win the small ones.
Yeah.
Both because it's how you generate votes. Like we've seen this, competing locally generates turnout for the entire ticket. A competitive election gets people to show up, and it might get people who don't think it's possible to win nationally, so they don't really care, but do think it's possible to elect a state legislator or a school board member, and so will show up and also vote the rest of the ballot. The other piece here is that if you want to control something like voter access or congressional districts or what kind of curriculum people get in their schools, you got to win these local offices. Those are the levers of power. Like, it is not just like a practical makes people's lives better. It makes it politically more possible to win when you've got the control of how the elections are governed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's been one of at least my biggest lessons learned since, starting this podcast and being more involved in politics, just how much state specifically, because the Ohio State House is a flaming piece of garbage, how much they control our daily lives and how much of what they do affects our daily lives. So it's fascinating. And yeah, I think the local races where we can win, it builds momentum and positivity and gives folks that drive to like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can win this next seat up. So that's awesome.
It builds the muscle of winning. Like
muscle of
practice.
Winning. Love
you got to get good at it. And I think something like Democrats, I won't say we like losing. I don't think anybody likes losing, but we don't always have a good habit for winning. And so it's hard to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk a bit about a debate that's happening within the Democratic Party specifically right now. So you've called the moderate versus progressive framing as an extremely dumb argument.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone who genuinely believes that the party needs to move to the center to win back swing voters?
Prove it.
I mean,
it's such a simplistic answer, but I will say if you genuinely believe that Joe Biden was a moderate and he won swing voters, but Kamala Harris campaigned on the exact same shit. That was actually part of the problem, was she campaigned on the exact same shit. I think that there is a moment where we are in, and this has been true for a little while, that people inside the party are disconnected from people outside the party. And I will say the party writ large is pundits and operatives and donors and even myself and candidates and, anyone who sort of functions as a blob. People do not have cohesive ideologies. And I will say that voters, if you can describe your policy positions as progressive or moderate or centrist, you're thinking more about it than most people do. You're not a normal person. You're not the median voter. Median voters, most people have problems and they want politicians to solve them. And they don't want to think about this much. They've got kids, they've got work, they've got bills. They've got hobbies they want to have time for. They want to go on vacation. They don't understand why Congress is doing all this bullshit and the lines at the airport are so long. They don't understand why housing is so expensive, but they're fucking pissed about it. And they want those problems to be solved. And everything else is a waste of time. Maybe they know who the president is. Probably at this point, they know who the president is. They probably don't know who their member of Congress is. They probably don't know who their state legislator is. They might know who their school board member is, or they might know what the school board is up to because they might have their kids in public school. When you think about it that way, how do people engage with politics and government? The idea that a single person's policy positions, and I know this is kind of counterintuitive, but what a candidate has as their policy positions is not important because of the actual impact they would have or whether someone agrees with them or not. It's important because what it says about that candidate's values and what it says about who that candidate is and who that candidate is fighting for. That is what actually matters. This drives people insane because surely policy must matter. And it's it does, but not for the reasons you think. Because we have seen this in poll after poll after poll, especially in the last year, and even from the more moderate think tanks. You don't have to agree with a candidate on every position in order to vote for them. You have to like them and trust them. That means it doesn't really matter. Or it doesn't matter the way you think it does. And that's really hard.
Yeah, that is hard and kind of crazy because to your point, also, the people, the party or whatever that we would call that, even people like us who kind of obviously live and breathe this much more deeply than the average American. It's that is what I think we always think is the most important thing. It's what is, and I think especially people in the party, we do draw lines on that. It's I won't vote for a candidate who doesn't support Medicare for all or whatever that line is. But to your point, and you kind of segued us into this, you talk a lot about authenticity. You just talked about trust, but authenticity, not necessarily ideology or policy, is the real axis that determines whether a candidate can break through or not. Can you, I don't know if you have an example where you've seen this work, maybe a moderate one or something like that. Could you share an example with us?
I'll give you an example. Run for Something worked with this guy, Andrew Harbaugh. So Andrew Harbaugh is a former Republican who left the party after January 6th. So he was a Republican for quite some time. He's a sports writer in very rural Pennsylvania. And he was running for office for the local common council, in no small part because he has his kids in public schools. One of his kids is special needs, and the cuts to the Department of Education were hurting his kids' way in which he ran for office. And the issues that he talked about were cost of living, they were schools, they were community centric. And he was able to flip a seat and ultimately flip control of the common council in this county in Pennsylvania that voted for Trump 70-30, which means he won Republicans, because you can't win a 70 district without winning some Republicans. His connection to community and his ability to show up as himself in all of these spaces, to go to the candidate forum and talk about his family, to go to the newspapers and the Democratic clubs and the Republican spaces and talk about why he's running and what mattered to him. Like, that's how you break through. That's how you flip people. They don't need to agree with you to like you and trust you. They need to believe you and believe that you believe in what you're saying. Policies are downstream of that. The thing that I come back to with leadership, and I say this, it's true in politics, true in work, it's true in every possible space, is that authenticity is important because it's what cultivates trust. And that is what leaders need. Leaders need to be trusted. And if I don't believe you, if I think you're selling me bullshit, I don't trust you to keep your word.
Speaking of not keeping your word, it's Taco Tuesday, if you know what I mean.
Let's hope for this one, though. You know what I mean?
That's such a good point, though, because even beyond Taco Trump, there's not a lot of trust in leadership right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard to move forward with really great, with progress in that sense.
It is, and I think this is part of the broader problem with the Democratic Party right now, which is that we don't trust that our leaders know what they're doing, that they are have our best interest in mind, that they are thinking strategically. And part of that is because they haven't earned it, but also it's because they're not good communicators. I think about the leaders I do trust right now. It's the ones that I hear from. It's the ones that are present. And anyone who's ever run a business or run a team knows, you have to say things over and over and over again, and it will drive you up a wall. But the 17th time you say it, it will actually break through.
Yeah.
Politicians who do not effectively communicate in this moment, who don't know how to have a conversation, who don't know how to use social media, who don't understand what their Gen Z staffer says to them when they say, "Sarah, I need you to make an Instagram reel." If they don't understand that question or that task, they cannot communicate in all of the ways you need to in order to build trust. No wonder the Democratic Party has a branding problem. People don't hear from us. They don't know who we are. Mm-hmm. I don't blame people for not liking the party. I don't like the party, and I'm a professional Democrat.
Yeah. I think I just a couple of things with that. One, the trust thing. It's I remember the sentiment was just not even the sentiment. People were downright saying this online especially after the 25 election. Mm-hmm. We were so pumped, such a great night. 2 days or a day later was when Schumer and team folded. And everyone's we just showed out and up for you, and this is what you do, Dem Party. And so that sentiment of trust is it hasn't felt like it's earned. And then back to that, it's and then you have, you could just look at Hakeem Jeffries or Schumer or that, right? These people have been in the party a long time, use social media, and you're okay, well, you haven't hit a single Gen Z person. Nobody in the Gen Z realm has any idea what you two are doing. Millennials likely as well. You know what I mean? Maybe the people watching MSNBC. It's but that's it. And so, yeah, I think you just completely nailed it.
And I don't blame people for not trusting the party. I think it started in 2020, certainly before that, where it's you told me that Biden could do this, you were wrong. And then you told me that Kamala could do it, and you were wrong. This is endemic of a larger problem in this moment where especially millennials and Gen Z do not trust institutions, nor should we.
Yeah.
How can we expect voters to show up for us if we are not giving them a reason to believe that we will do what we say? And actually, I'm a New Yorker. I was excited to vote for Mamdani. I'm even more excited to see him govern, in part because I think the way that he's governing rebuilds trust in the party in every little Instagram video or TikTok.
Yeah.
The one where he's filling potholes, the one where he talked about going on the 311 line and answering calls about can I recycle a mirror? I wrote about this at the first 2 weeks where he did that press conference announcing new childcare policies, genuinely made me emotional, which is such a ridiculous thing to say. It's proof that when you campaign on something and then you immediately are able to say, look, I'm going to deliver this. Here's how I'm going to deliver this. That's oh, democracy can work.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful and it can work. We did it. Well, and that's really special.
It is special. And I think to that point, he campaigned, but he's still campaigning. And that is something Democrats haven't done once they're in office. I look back at Biden, that infrastructure bill actually was a huge thing for a lot of communities. But you know what? No one has any idea that the bridge being fixed in their community came from that bill. Like nobody has any idea that like that money or that investment was like, you know what I mean? Like that was communicated so poorly. I can barely tell you what that bill did. And I pay attention to politics. It's like that's the kind of stuff where there was actually quite a bit of good that the Biden administration got done. And it's like nobody has any idea that any of that happened.
It's because Biden could not be the communicator.
Nope. Yeah.
Like, I think there's a tendency among, the pundits and the whatevers to be like, oh, just influencer candidates. And it's like, yes, every candidate right now should be thinking about themselves as an influencer.
Yeah.
100%. Not like a shitty one, not like a slimy one, but someone who is trying to influence people to believe in you, to take action, to trust you, to be part of a community, a good influencer. If you think it like I scroll my Instagram feed like anyone else, and I get all the like people trying to tell me, sell me toddler toys and clothes and makeup. And like the good ones are the ones who I trust, I like, I believe that they genuinely are recommending the products they're selling me. They make me feel like I'm part of a community. I feel like I know them. I feel like I believe them. A politician, a good one, should create that same feeling in me, where if I see them in any space, whether it's in a news article or my Instagram feed or like an ad on TV, it should be the same version of them because they should be genuinely like authentic enough. And it should be a way in which I believe them. And the candidates who understand that and who operationalize that and then do that, not just through campaigning, but while governing, are going to be the ones who like rebuild the brand of the Democratic Party and who can break through in this moment. Like if all you're doing is going on like the Sunday morning shows and issuing press releases, like who is that for?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think about that a lot because we follow our state house closely here in Ohio. And like the Democrats go on and do these press conferences and that's it. Like two of them do Instagram well. Like two of them, like they're the more progressive, younger candidates or younger elected officials. They get on and they share like, hey, we just had a presser about this. And like, this is what's going on in the state house. And it's like, they're just talking to you and it's good. And they can catch you with a hook or whatever.
And
But most of them,
in like normal human.
yeah. But most of them, I watch these politicians just take the video from that press conference and put it on their Instagram. And I'm like, oh my God, like, like no one's watching that.
Some amount of empathy here. It is hard.
It is hard. It takes a lot of work.
It takes a lot of work. I run my own social media accounts. It takes a lot of my time. It sucks. It's exhausting. And it requires putting yourself out there and like thinking about how can I constantly retell the same story over and over again in ways that are interesting and engaging. And yeah, there are staff you can hire to help you make that a little bit easier, but it is the way that you communicate now to break through both internally and externally. It's so funny. I'll have like Run for Something supporters who will say, I'll get on a call with them to talk about them, giving us money. And they'll be like, oh, I saw your like TikTok on my For You page. And I was like, that's the point. You're supposed to. I made it so that you would see it and then jump on this call and feel like you know me a little better.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
correct. That is exactly why I did it.
Yeah. Speaking of maybe folks that don't quite understand that, let's talk about moderates.
Well, that's not fair, I don't think. But I think when you think moderate, maybe you think like older person, but I feel like young people, feel like more progressive usually. But yes, I agree in some regards.
So you've said Democrats have effectively been running a moderate centrist vision since 1992, and that is older than I am. And that frustration with progressives is often really just frustrating with people being yelled at online. So where do you think the real ideological fault line inside the party actually sits?
It's a good question. I do think there's real division on Israel.
Yes.
And that's like a big one at this moment. I think that the party is moving, voters are moving further and further away. Party leaders who stay beholden to an old understanding of what our relationship with Israel should be are missing the moment, and they're going to regret. I think that there's a real shift, and we're actually seeing this a little bit on more broadly across the party on housing. Like I think that there wasn't as much of an acknowledgement about the need to tackle this as a crisis. It's more localized in part because you can't do much federally on housing. There's some, but like not a ton. But you're seeing Democratic electeds especially in blue places, but in red ones too, be like, we have to make it easier for people to afford to live here. We're seeing real push on childcare, and I think there's less of a pushback inside the party, which is good. There's still debates about healthcare, which I'm over it. I don't say that to dismiss that it's not important. It is. It's just like, not in this Congress, not with this president.
Right.
But there's still a division on choice. There are still some anti-abortion Democrats. They are not as prevalent. They're not as loud. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think for now, the biggest focus of those fights will be state and local. So the priority needs to be state and local. But I think the real dividing factor, as I said up top, is on Israel.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think just to be very frank about Ohio, like we're seeing that with Sherrod Brown running. So there's independent, I think he technically is like the Socialist Party, Greg Levy running as well. And I mean, there are people who adamantly will not vote for Sherrod Brown because of the money he takes from like AIPAC and the support from the Israel lobby. And that's their line and that's fair. But the reality is in a red state like Ohio, that likely gives John Huston a much easier chance to keep that seat, which is really unfortunate. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that race play out over the next couple months.
I think that's right. I think it's also connected to a larger problem, which is like where people get their money, corporate money, AI money, I think is going to become a big dividing line. Tech money, I think is going to continue to be a dividing line. And I think there's some challenges here of like, where you get your money doesn't always drive your policy. Sometimes your policy like sort of drives who gives you money, but it does make you more or less risk averse. Yeah. And I think that could be some of the challenges here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to something else you talk about frequently, which is the world after Donald Trump, which we all have big dreams, right? Like we're all waiting. Okay, so your org and work focuses on recruiting, obviously, young progressive candidates like we just talked about, but your red to blue kind of strategy requires just you to also have an understanding of like what's happening on the Republican side of the world. So curious how you read the GOP right now. Like, do you see them drifting toward any type of like post-Trump identity, or are we just like on the verge of implosion and we don't know what's happening next? Like, what are you seeing in the moment?
I think they are going to be facing a real identity crisis post-Trump. And I am excited because I think it will be fun. I mean, it will be very dangerous for humanity, but very fun to watch.
Like a train wreck. You can't look away.
Because the MAGA thing does not fly when it's not Trump. Like voters, they liked it from him because they don't always believe it from him, but they don't actually like a lot of the part. Like there is a core, but it's like what, 30% of the Republican Party?
Yeah.
Or 30% of the American people, but like that's not really enough. So I do think post-Trump, which he will never be on the ballot again. I think it's important to say that very clearly. He's not going to run for president again. He will never be on the ballot again. Can J.D. Vance sell the same shtick? No. That man has no charisma. He's so punchable. Can Marco Rubio? Like Kristi Noem? No. Nikki Haley? We've learned no. Like there's no clear successor. I see there's some conversation about like Tucker Carlson's going to run for president. Scary, but also people who are listening and not seeing my face, I'm just making very wide eyes. I don't, there's not a clear successor.
Yeah.
And that I actually think resembles in many ways where the Democratic Party was post-Obama, where, there was like Hillary and then Biden kind of, but it wasn't the Democratic Party coalition. It was the Obama coalition. Yeah. And in the same way, the Republican Party is Trump coalition. It's not the Republican coalition. We know that because we see Democrats winning on the ballot when Trump is also on the ballot. Other Republicans don't get the same veneer or the same pass to say the same crazy things. So I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Terrible, but fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with that assessment. Yes. Terrible, but fun. Train wreck we all will not be able to look away from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to try to redeem myself with this segue. Now let's talk about folks who really don't understand social media and the use and using it for campaigns and getting caught up with Republicans. You have pushed hard for Democrats over 70 to step aside and make room for new leadership. That is what Run for Something is about, or a big section of it. What, do you think we're starting to see this happen? I mean, it's just so funny to say Democrats over 70. Like, oh my gosh, 70 is so old. Are we starting to see this? Please give us some hope here.
We are. We have seen a number of older senators step aside, which is great. And when they've done so, they've opened up incredibly interesting primaries. I mean, we're seeing this in Minnesota, in Michigan, where Tina Smith in Minnesota, Gary Peters in Michigan retired. They want to bring about a new generation pass the torch. And those primaries are fascinating and like interesting and different and allowing the party to decide who we are now. And I think that's good. A hesitation among many older leaders to step back is making that some of them are being challenged. And I think some of them will lose those challenges. Others are not and are trying to cling with their wrinkly old hands to power as long as they can, hoping that they'll be in the majority in a year and they can actually do something with it. It is really, I think, selfish and dangerous for the Democratic Party for these folks to continue to stay in office. That is not to say that they don't have value add or that they can't do something good. Like, I'm not saying take these people out back and kill them. Like, I'm not saying you need to die. I am saying nobody is entitled to age and retire or leave the moral coil as one of the most powerful people in the country. And I think that is like the place where we are in this moment. But generational change doesn't happen overnight. We're almost there. It's the beginning, not the end.
Right.
Yeah. I think something I'll just say, like, there's obviously, I'm going to go back to the Sherrod Brown race. Sorry. But he's, I don't know, 76 or 78. I can't remember how old he is. He's old. And that's something someone was like, well, Sherrod Brown's the only one with the name recognition in Ohio who could win. And I was like, okay, maybe that's true. But like, how many people have we actually had die in office in the last, I don't know, 5 years? Like, whenever Biden was in there, I forget how many people we lost in the House because they're in there so long, and then we lose seats. But also, like, back, I mean, there's so many reasons that I think I agree with you, people over 70 shouldn't run, but back to like someone passing the torch, I think that's where I'm frustrated with like our current Ohio situation is like, why hasn't somebody, if Sherrod's the leader of our Ohio party, why hadn't he been mentoring or bringing someone up or raising them up to, so that they were in a position where their name was recognized? And that's what I think I'm really frustrated with. Like, obviously I'm voting for Sherrod Brown, right? We're going to vote for Democrats, but it's frustrating to see.
I think this is my frustration too. It's like, are you really the best and only person who could do this right now? And if so, that's actually a damning indictment of your own leadership. If you have not built up others, if you have not created a bench of talent for other people to take over, you have failed in one of your core responsibilities as a public servant. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on, can you talk about, do the Republicans have this problem of older folks not being willing to step aside?
They have it a little bit less, in part because their committee chairmanship is not determined by seniority. So there's like not as much of a benefit for their older leaders to stay in office as long. Whereas Democrats have really privileged seniority. It is, they have also been more open to primary challenges, to sort of party defining fights earlier. Their caucus is a little bit younger, but they've also got like Chuck Grassley in the United States Senate. So no one's perfect here.
Okay, this is kind of not related to like post-Trump world, but I am curious your take on this because I think some of the spaces that we do see, like someone come in and be like, you know what, I'm going to run for office, which is obviously a big thing of what you ask people to do. There's a lot of sentiment from people who have been in the party that are like, okay, well, we've been doing this work for 10 years. And like, you know what I mean? And who are you to kind of come in? And I see that, like, I see that point of view. It's, if you've put your whole kind of like blood, sweat, and tears into this for so long, but at the same time, I'm a big proponent of like, we have to make room for new and change, and we have to figure out how to evolve. So I guess, what's your take on that? Like, what's the balance? How does someone do that well without like kind of pissing off everyone who's like there and should help and support them?
And sometimes you are going to piss people off, and like, you just kind of got to be okay with making people mad. I do think it's important to understand why the system is broken before you try to fix it. And like, the system, if it was easy, it wouldn't be this way. When people are like, oh, there's one simple solution, I don't understand why they don't just do this. It's like, because just doing this is really hard. There's actually a bunch of confounding factors. And it sometimes takes someone who hasn't been part of building the broken system to fix it. And that, like, it does require some ego sort of death, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think we are at a moment, especially this is the problem with politics, being both a profession and also like a life or death scenario, as we are discussing this on a day where like Trump is promising to destroy a civilization, which I really hope I don't come to regret joking. Like, this is not table stakes. This is real shit. And we need to be okay saying, you know what, maybe the way that I've been doing this for the last 10 years is not the way to do it for the next 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's transition then to 2026 midterms and just kind of beyond that. As we head into 2026 with a fresh momentum, I mean, really, we do have the momentum right now on the Democratic side of the world. Obviously, we have a deeply unpopular administration, but I think one thing we're seeing is folks are warning that like the wave of anti-Trump sentiment shouldn't be mistaken for Democrats having fixed our underlying credibility problems, which we've talked about. I would just say, like, what is Run for Something seeing and hearing on the ground right now in regards to the Democratic Party? Like, has opinion started to shift at all? Is there any trust being built? Where are we at kind of in the middle here of 2026?
I think we're getting there. Like, I do think that there is some self-owns on our part. And I think party leadership refusing to back Mamdani after he won the nominee was really stupid.
Yes,
really stupid. Because it like undermines the argument of vote blue no matter who.
Yeah. And exactly, the left side of the party was able to come back and say like, okay, you guys have never met this, right? Yeah. Like, you've never met it.
You don't need it.
Yeah. Which is totally fair.
Which it is. And I think that there is a really tentative place we are in, where we see as these primaries go through and like who is able to win them. So I do think that by the end of this year, the Democratic Party is going to be different, whether many of these primary challenges work or not, because they are going to change. You're going to change how the party stands.
So let's talk about Run for Something's 2026 plan. So really, y'all are aiming to endorse a minimum of 300 candidates across 19 states. So exciting. And y'all want to have an emphasis on Gen Z leaders, immigrant workers, and candidates coming from non-traditional backgrounds, which we have seen a lot of non-traditional background candidates in Ohio. And Ashley and I are so giddy about it because we're like, yes, you can get involved. You can run for office. You can run for office. So it's super exciting, and I just love that Run for Something is doing this. Can you talk about what winning candidates in 2026 have in common that losing ones don't?
Well, it's still very early in the year, so we're going to see. But I will say we are already now up to about 276 endorsed candidates for the year. We're going to blow our 300 candidate goal out of the water. There has never been, there's like never been such demand for our help. And I'm obsessed with these people. They're amazing leaders. The day that we're recording this, April 7th, we just announced a new class of 76 endorsees. Let me tell you about some of these all-stars. Jackie McGuire in Arizona, who's an entrepreneur, an executive, tech expert. She's running for Marana Town Council in Arizona. She's a vocal advocate for her neighbors. She's an AI data center and cybersecurity expert who has been a leading voice in the fight against the data center project in the area, in particular thinking about transparency and protecting the water and power grid. Exactly who we need in office.
Yeah.
In Florida, Jaden D'Onofrio, he has been one of the founders of Florida Future Leaders, which is a Gen Z-led political organization that's registered thousands of voters. He's 21 years old. He's running for state house. He's amazing. In Colorado, we just endorsed Sophia Gibb. She's a two-time Paralympic medalist running for Chaffee County clerk and recorder. She's currently the elections deputy in that office, so she's been overseeing election functions during secure, accessible, and compliant elections. She's a multi-time world champion. Cool. We should get more people like her into office.
Yeah.
And we also just endorsed Samantha Catton in New York. She's a daughter of immigrants, working parent. She spent years as a tenant organizer. She really wants to fight for more social housing, strong tenant protections, free childcare in the New York State Assembly. Cool people. Cool ass people.
Incredible. That's incredible. Okay, we're going to start to wrap up. We just have a couple more questions. I do want to revisit the progressive versus moderate fight as we look to 2026 and beyond. So it just feels like obviously this is everywhere. It's kind of like erupts after things happen, right? Like the special election that Afton Bain nearly won. People were like, see, we need progressives. And then the primary in Illinois 9 was especially like kind of that debate happening on like who's the most progressive or left candidate and who do we need there. So with that all said, that race also had a lot of like attacking and negativity involved too. So how do you think we keep that internal conflict on the left of moderate versus progressive from becoming like self-inflicted wound going into election seasons and then even into 2028?
Part of it is I think it's a healthy conversation to be having. It's an exhausting conversation to be having, but it's a healthy one because part of the point of these primaries is to decide what we believe as a party. And once the primary is over, get behind that nominee. Like get behind the nominee, especially in a red versus blue place, but like get behind the nominee and get behind them with the full force over your beliefs. And acknowledge that like the primary is the place where you vote your heart and the general is where you vote your head.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's that simple too, but I was just curious what you thought.
Yeah. It's like, and in particular for like Afton Bain, who ran for something, worked with her in her state house race, it's like, if people, that was a lot of like retrospective, a lot of the folks who were like, oh, she was too progressive. Great. Where were you in that primary? Get in the fight. Shut the fuck up or get in the fight.
See, I saw the opposite take on that. It was like, look how well she performed, like, and it was because she's progressive, so I saw both takes on that, which is interesting.
It was all exhausting.
Yes.
It's just like, yes, we got it from all different directions. It was all exhausting. Speaking of hopefully the opposite of exhausting, what gives you hope right now? We've talked about a lot of exciting things, but if you could just sum up where you kind of get that drive to get out of bed every day in this terrible world, and if you could share it with our audience, that would just be lovely.
I get inspired by the people who are running and winning or losing. But the fact that we had so many people, tens of thousands of people sign up last year who are now getting on the ballot this year and running in places that are so hard. Like we have folks running in districts that have never contested by a Democrat before, or that Trump won by 50 points. And like, imagine being willing to put your name on the ballot in that kind of place and say, you know what, I'm going to speak up for the other side. I don't think I'm that brave. And so I find that action, that courage to be so deeply contagious, because it means that we have a chance. While the people at the top, the elites and the institutions and the CEOs and the university presidents are failing basically every test they get on whether or not they have backbones, seeing people at the quote unquote bottom rise to the occasion, like I think we're going to be okay. I think it's going to be hard, but I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I love that. If folks want to learn more or support you, your work, or your organization, where should they do that at?
So you can go to runforsomething.net to learn more about the organization. You can go to runforwhat.net to learn where you could run for office, because it's not too late in many places. Some places it is, but it's not too late. It's definitely not too early to get started for next year. And you can learn more about me at just amandalitman.com.
So Amanda will have all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.